Welcome to I Love This Thing So Fricking Much, a podcast about passion. My name is Sophie Katz, and today I'm joined by Lauren, a librarian and birdwatcher based in Texas. Welcome to the show, Lauren.
Thanks, Sophie. It's great to be here.
Well, great to have you here. So, here's how this works. Lauren will have 3 minutes to talk about something that she loves. This can be a person, place, thing, concept, activity, anything she wants. Our only requirement is that she loves it wholeheartedly and wants to tell us why. Are you ready, Lauren?
Yeah, let's do this.
All right. I've got my timer here. Now, what do you love so fricking much?
Well, I love bird watching so much because in its most basic form, it's really simple and you can do it pretty much anywhere. There are more than 10,000 bird species spread across all manner of habitats, including the ocean. So chances are good of finding birds wherever you are out and about on the planet, whether in your own backyard or on vacation. Many birders plan specific trips, especially to see certain birds, but bird watching can really be much simpler than that. Truly, all you need is an observant attitude. Binoculars and field guides are very helpful, but it's also possible to bird by ear, and that's when you identify birds that are present by sound. So today we even have phone apps to assist with all of this, so you can be very much a beginner and kind of learn as you go. But once a person has developed basic birdwatching skills, they can take those in many different directions, just maybe doing it for fun or setting certain goals. Maybe they decide to pursue bird photography or spend time volunteering. So there can be a social aspect to it, plus a solo aspect, which is really great for introverts like me, because sometimes I just want to be alone with the birds. Although I will say birding with a group is a great way to learn and grow in your own skills. So as bird watchers, we do have a code of ethics. But other than that, there's really no one right way to birdwatch. It's pretty much whatever most speaks to your mind and your heart. It's a really good way to get outdoors and spend time in nature, which of course has proven stress relief benefits. And birdwatching can be a lifelong pursuit. So personally, I've always felt like I'm enjoying my current birdwatching adventures, but also setting the stage for even bigger adventures in the future as I gain more experience and set different goals for myself. Now, if you really get into birdwatching, you will probably experience some challenges along the way. One of my most memorable trips involved driving for 5 hours, only for the trip to be mostly rained out. So we were all wet and cold and grumpy. And as we were leaving, our van actually got stuck in the mud. You kind of learn to roll with the punches. So in some respects, that's probably good practice for life in general. Of course, I love the birds themselves. Seeing a bird for the first time in your life makes it all worthwhile, all the challenges. We call these life birds, but even the ones you see every day are fun, just observing their behavior and maybe how their feathers change over time, seasonality. So birdwatching connects you to the natural environment in a way similar to maybe something like gardening, where you start to really notice a change of seasons, and it can be a gateway to a larger awareness of conservation issues and stewardship. So I think that's ideally one of birding's best legacies, making folks passionate about the beauty and diversity that exists on our planet and advocating to protect it. Because of course, we don't love birds in a vacuum. Loving birds means loving all manner of other living things and recognizing our own place in the world and our responsibilities to it. So those are
Go
some
ahead
of,
and finish your thought.
yeah, those are some of the reasons why I love birdwatching so freaking much.
That's awesome. Thank you for telling us about birdwatching today.
Very glad to share my passion here.
How did your interest in birdwatching begin?
Well, I always kind of watched birds in my backyard. We had bird feeders growing up, and at my grandmother's house, she fed the hummingbirds. So that was always really fun as a child, but I didn't really get into it seriously until I was an adult and I started hiking and camping in Texas. And one of the things to do was you could look for birds while you're out there. And that's when I really kind of fell head over heels. But I think starting young and just getting that awareness that birds exist and that we can watch them and they're really cool, starting young was really helpful.
Do you have any favorite birds in particular that you have seen before, either by sight or you mentioned that you also do birding by ear as well?
I have a spark bird. Most birders have a bird that is kind of the bird that made them fall in love with birding. So that one is the vermilion flycatcher. The male of the species is almost a fluorescent reddish orange and has black on his face. So just a very striking bird. And I saw that one in Big Bend and I was like, oh my gosh, what is this beautiful creature? So how could you not want to start birding after that? So that's a classic favorite, but I also really like crows, blue jays, all the ones in the corvid family because they're very intelligent. It's hard to pick a favorite. The birding by ear is a little bit different. I'm still learning, but there are some birds that make very beautiful sounds and some that I feel like sound like dinosaurs if we knew what dinosaurs actually sounded like a great blue heron. If you ever look up this bird's call, it's quite remarkable. It's like very squawky and guttural.
Well, birds are dinosaurs, basically, so I understand it.
It's true. It's true. That's actually a really cool thing. I wish I would have mentioned that in my 3 minutes. They are literally like living dinosaurs. If you want to see a dinosaur, just look at a bird.
Well, it's like how you mentioned that people's passion for bird watching is connected to a greater passion for the natural world, and you'd be very hard pressed to find someone who didn't have a dinosaur phase when they were a little kid.
That's true. I definitely had one of those myself when Jurassic Park came out. I thought I was going to be a paleontologist. So maybe I didn't end up as far away as I thought.
Talk a little more about your adventures in bird watching. You mentioned one particular misadventure where your car got stuck in the mud, but what other stories do you have?
Oh my goodness. Well, this has really opened the gateway to just all things nature. I spent about the equivalent of 16 work days last year birdwatching based on my statistics, and I traveled over 150 miles just looking at birds, mostly in Texas for me, getting kind of out in West Texas where it's pretty rural. So that misadventure was definitely one of the most memorable. One that actually went really well, that was, I would not categorize it as a misadventure, was on a private ranch out on the Rio Grande. And that's one of the great things about going on birding trips. If you go on organized trips, sometimes the guides will have relationships with landowners, so you can gain access to those lands that are otherwise closed to the public, which is a really big deal in Texas. We actually don't have a lot of public land. So getting to go on this ranch, it had actually been in that family since the King of Spain granted the land.
Oh, wow.
Yes, hundreds and hundreds of years ago, it was still in the same family. This is not a place many people get to go. We were able to walk along the river and we were able to spy a murrelet seed eater, which was a bird I had been looking for about 3 years without success. So you can imagine how excited I was. This tiny little bird, it's just a small little brown bird, but it made my day when it popped up and finally got to see that bird.
You mentioned before that bird watchers have a code of ethics. Could you talk a little more about that?
Yeah, it's from the American Birding Association, a code of ethics that is really kind of describing the behavior that we want to promote when we're out in the field. Things like basic respect, but also respecting the birds. So one of the big things is to be cognizant of bird calls. I mentioned some of the apps you can use to identify bird calls and learn them, but some people will also play them to call the birds in to try to draw them in.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to be very cognizant about how you're doing that. It's not allowed at all in national parks, for instance. And you also don't really want to do it like during breeding season because the males could interpret that as like a rival male. And basically, you don't want to stress out the birds. Like you're there to observe, and we don't want to make life harder for them. Humans have already, in some cases, made life hard enough. So the code of ethics is speaking to that, as well as like respecting the rights of landowners and not jumping fences and things like that. Just I know you want to see the bird, but you got to get permission. Basically, just how to be like a good human and a good birder.
Yeah, how to make sure that in your pursuit of your passion, you don't infringe on anyone else's fun or safety.
Exactly.
Is there anything that you don't like about bird watching? And if so, how do you handle that?
Generally, I love it. And I'll put aside the challenges that we already talked about. I mean, no one can control the weather, but I will say that that has been a challenge sometimes. I think, like institutionally speaking, there have been some challenges, especially for female birders, not feeling safe out in the field, like going
Mm-hmm.
hiking alone and things like that. So that's kind of always a concern. And I think birding as a whole could do a lot better with regards to accessibility and welcoming people of color, people from diverse backgrounds. It does tend to be a very like white, wealthy hobby. And I would really like to see more work done to change that. And there is work being done, but that is something I would love to see the birding world address. Even things like accessibility. A lot of these places we go, they don't have restrooms available or they don't have trails that someone who has mobility issues could tackle. And it's not always clear if you are a person who needs certain accommodations, if that's a good place for you to bird or not. So there is some work being done, just websites listing, hey, if you've birded at this place, can you tell us if there are restrooms there? Can you tell us what the condition of the trails are? So that then people know if that's a good place for them to bird, and you don't have to like be in the know or know somebody. It should be publicly accessible information.
Do you have any advice for anyone who's thinking about getting started in bird watching, but maybe they have concerns that they don't know what they don't know, and they don't know where to find this information?
I think we have so many tools available nowadays. I can't even imagine trying to get started in this hobby even 50 years ago. I really like the apps from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, and I think we're going to link to those as well. There's a couple of free apps. Merlin is the one that I like to start our novice birders with. It will help you identify birds by color and also by sound. So that's a really good way to learn. Picking up a field guide or even just borrowing one from the library, see if it works for you or not, and just spend time outdoors, listening to the birds, observing birds, learning what to look for in terms of size and shape and what time of year are you seeing these birds. You really can't go wrong with time spent outdoors. So I just recommend get started, maybe connect with a local Audubon Society chapter in your neighborhood if there is one. A lot of them will do beginner bird walks. I know mine does. So that's a good way to get involved in a very like non-judgmental way as well. If you just want to hop on a bird walk, people are happy to have you.
Lauren, thank you so much for telling us about something you love today.
Thank you so much, Sophie.
And thank you, our listeners, for tuning in today. If you'd like to learn more about bird watching, Lauren gave us some links to resources that you can find in the episode description. And if you have something you love so freaking much you want to tell me all about it, consider this your invitation to join the show. I Love This Thing So Freaking Much is a production of Through the Window Media. This episode was directed and edited by Sophie A. Katz. You can find us at Through the Window on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or Tumblr. That is THROU the Window at all those social media sites. Be good to yourself, be kind to each other, and you'll hear from us again soon.